and welcome back. Good afternoon and welcome back to PBA at noon. We hope you've been having and enjoying this good summer. To the people out in BC, I hope everything is fine with you with all the fires out there and everything else. Today, PBA, in conjunction with our friends at Kin Communication, is pleased to introduce Northstar Clean Technologies Inc, which trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol ROOF, R-O-O-F. Northstar is a technology company focused on the extraction and recovery of components from single-use asphalt shingles. They have an environmentally friendly processing solution that utilizes a proprietary process to separate the liquid asphalt, fiber, and aggregate components. Northstar recently completed a $12.2 million financing and a subsequent listing on the TSX Venture Exchange in July of this year. They are led by a team of experienced and successful industry professionals with a combined 280 years of operational capital markets experience. And here to tell us more about Northstar is CEO Aidan Mills and their Director of Capital Markets, Carson, Sedun. Gentlemen, feel free to start whenever you wish, and we definitely will have some questions for you at the end. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, let me just share my screen here, and I will get started. Sorry. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Kind of from Calgary and west, and afternoon to everybody in east. My name's Aidan Mills. I'm the CEO of Northstar Clean Technologies, and today we're going to tell you the story about for the top circular economy green tech ESG story that you will likely have ever heard presented by an Irish guy. So that's my objective for today. So I've been the CEO since the 12th of July. I was part-time through until the 1st of September, when I go full-time in the role. So it is interesting to be presenting the full IR story to some investors this morning. But the reason that I joined is the story that I'm about to tell you today and lay out the investment thesis here. So my background, I spent 19 years at BP, 10 years in engineering, and then a balance after that of commercial strategy, origination, and commodity trading. Family settled in Calgary, and I moved to Husky, worked there for around 5 years, and then moved across to work for Goldman, and laterally for Meg and a small family office here in Calgary. And so that's my kind of background, and the reason why I'm here to lead is that I truly believe that we have a very unique technology application, a very unique commercial application, and we actually believe that we are a company that will make the difference with respect to ESG and the circular economy. So what's this all about? Well, as kind of Paul introduced it quickly, this is about asphalt shingle tiles. So as you step back and you think about an asphalt shingle tile, it's essentially made up of 3 broad components. So about 50% of an asphalt tile is sand, about 25% is fiber. In older tiles, that will be paper. In newer tiles, it will be fiberglass. And about 25% of it is asphalt oil. So asphalt shingle tiles, what's the problem with asphalt shingle tiles? Well, the problem with asphalt shingle tiles is something like you see in the picture on the right-hand side here. So if you step back and you look at the US figures, about 13 million tiles come off roofs in the US per year. And of that, about 1 million is ground up and put back in the road as part of recycling. But 12 million tons a year of asphalt shingles goes into landfill. And 84% of the US roofs are tiled with asphalt annually. So as you think about that, this is the objective that we are thinking about. This is the objective that we are trying to address. We believe we have a technology that has the potential to stop all of the asphalt shingles going into recycling. So the problem isn't actually going away. Asphalt shingles are cheaper, they're harder wearing, and they're lighter than a lot of the competition. It's the most popular roofing material in North America. And I often get asked the question, excuse me, do you think there's going to be an alternative to asphalt? Is there going to be some sort of new tile that comes out? Well, the answer to that is possibly, as people think about the technology and innovation technology in different areas. But ultimately, for the next 20 years, we see this type of recycling opportunity and this type of repurposing opportunity as incredibly high, because repeatedly the amount of asphalt shingles that are used for roofing is high. So we've developed a process that can separate the components of a shingle tile into its individual component parts with a quality of over 99%. And if you think about the time for this project and how we are bringing it forward, 5 years ago, it would have been too early to talk to people about recycling and to talk to people about repurposing and to talk to people about landfills, because there really wasn't the momentum at that point in time to think about solutions and reducing landfill. In 5 years' time, we believe that people will have solved this problem. So this is exactly the right time to bring a project like this to market. If you think about the circular economy, if you think about this project and how it meets ESG criteria, if you think about the alignment between what the federal government are thinking, what the provincial government are thinking, what the US governments are thinking, if you think about the Clean Cities program, if you think about landfill reduction and diversion, as a time to bring this technology to market, this is exactly the time to do it. So how do we do it and what do we do? Well, this is our process. This is also aligned strongly with the revenue model, and I'll kind of use my cursor to describe this. So we bring asphalt shingle tiles in, we grind them up, we put them into our proprietary process that processes and separates, and then that drives liquid asphalt, fibre, and the sand out the back end of the process. So the revenue model and the cost model comes from exactly the same thing. Each plant, we believe, will be around about 150 to 200 tons a day. The capital to build one of these facilities, probably in the $5 to $10 million range. I'll describe later what we're doing to determine accurately that cost. So there are 5 revenue sources as you look at this. Obviously, the cost model is from grinding, processing, and separation. So there's a capital cost to build, and then there's the cost in the middle. And then there are 5 revenue sources as we think about this. So the first revenue source is asphalt shingles. So actually today in Calgary, I'm based in Calgary, so today in Calgary, if you take a ton of asphalt shingles to a landfill, you have to pay a tipping fee of around about $50 a ton. So this is the first time I've ever been in a business where somebody is actually going to pay me for the feedstock. And so that asphalt shingle tipping fee for us, and we're likely to position that at approximately 75% of the municipal rate. So we will get paid for the asphalt shingles that get delivered to our site, and that's the first element of the revenue model. Then each one of these elements, for the asphalt, the fibre, and the aggregate sand, with the quality that we produce out the back end of the facility, all of those have market rates. We've assessed the quality of the asphalt that's coming out the back, and it meets liquid asphalt quality. So it can be used in roads, it can be used and repurposed for tiles, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a market quality available feedstock. And as you think about this, so you think about the ESG pressure that people like a Lafarge are under, or people like a McAsphalt are under, Colas, the parent company. So these are companies that have significant ESG pressure and significant from their shareholders. And what we offer is we offer a potential to have an element of their production as essentially renewable, but certainly part of the circular economy. And so the value for this asphalt, which is currently discounted to market because we're just in the startup mode, the value for this asphalt has significant upside, both to a market level and potentially higher. And that ties me in with the fifth box that isn't on here at all. So if you think about the process of producing virgin asphalt through an asphalt refinery, if you think about the process to mine, sand, wash it, process it, color it, transport it, and if you think about the fiber that comes out of paper mills, all of those have a CO2 and emissions component. We believe the emissions that we have to deliver exactly the same products at the back end of this process are significantly lower. And so we believe that there's a fifth revenue box that comes down here, which is carbon credits. So we think the CO2 footprint measured against virgin production is very good. So let's just jump quickly in. So we believe we have a strong commercial model. So even when we're conservative with these assumptions, we believe the capital payback is probably about 2 to 3 years. And we're basing this on a plant EBITDA of about $2 to $4 million. Now, again, this is very, very early because we're trying to determine exactly what the commerciality of these elements are. But that's a very, very high level view of a kind of a 2 to 3 year payback on a capital of around $7.5 million. So not only do we think we have a strong environment to operate in, not only do we think we have a strong commercial environment, but we actually believe we have a strong capital structure as well. So IPO was, I joined in the 12th, the IPO was on the 13th, 106 million shares, IPO price was at 35 cents. Carson told me just before we jumped on the phone here that we were trading around mids of around 47.5. Warrants of about, so you can see warrants of about 25 million warrants. Half of those are trading. They have an exercise price of 50 cents. They're trading around kind of 23.5 for the mids, and the remainder, which are not trading, have got an average exercise price of about 30 cents. So that's the equity structure, and the capital structure for the company has huge upside because there is no non-dilutive funding in here today. So there's no debt provision, either from traditional sources or ESG loans, etc. And I'll talk about it in a little while about what we're doing next, but there's no government funding that we have secured with respect to grants, loans, or subsidies. So if you looked at our financials that came out yesterday, over $10 million worth of cash, and I'll describe the plan that we're going to have going forward. $10 million worth of cash, and that has all come from equity. So there's a huge upside in the capital structure from non-dilutive options. Okay, so what are we doing next, and where are we on the development process? Remember, this isn't an ESG play that is going to deliver technology solution in 25 or 2030 or 2035. This is an ESG play that will deliver this year. So in the next 3 to 4 months. So what are we doing? So as I mentioned about the non-dilutive funding, one of the big things is government and public affairs engagement. So Wellington DuPont is our advisor, and they're leading the engagement with the federal level, also in the provincial level and the municipal level, and also with the funding agencies. So not just the government, the government themselves to help from a political perspective, but also from a funding perspective in determining what funds are available to move forward. That's critical because we think there's a significant room as you think about the government programs that are coming out for funding, level of dilutive funding, etc., and how we can access those and what they can support. So we believe that there's a huge match with a number of government programs. The second thing is the Delta plant. So we expect the first truck of asphalt from the plant to come out within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we're hoping to get to steady state production by Q4 this year. We think the debottlenecking of the plant to get it to its kind of nominal capacity is in Q2. It's difficult to say exactly what that looks like, but the Delta plant is not a bench scale plant. It's a major plant in a warehouse. Production capacity could be in the 100-ton per day range. But when we look at the modular plants that we're going to design for all the new plants and the strategic rollout, those are only 2 to 3 times the scale of the Delta plant. So, Delta at 50 to 100 and the new plant at 150 to 200. So the technology scale-up risk isn't 10 times, it's not 100 times. We're not trying to go from a bench scale to a major plant. This is about the optimization of that design. So we know the design works, we know the technology works. And so the new plant is all about making sure that's efficient, making sure it's debottlenecked, and making sure we've got the capacity that we need to perform reliably. We have started an RFP process, so a request for proposal process. We've got 3 Calgary engineering companies competing to build that. We have the submissions are due in September. We will evaluate those and then award the RFP in October. And the engineering design will be completed around about the end of Q1. The most important thing, there's 2 things that are important about that process. Number one, it's a process to design the facility, which is fine, and get ready for a construction, completed by the end of first quarter. But secondly, there's an ongoing operational need, which is to optimize the design going forward. So our view is that plant 3 will be an improvement of plant 2, plant 5 will be an improvement. And the only way that we can do that is have the constant feedback for the optimization to go into the engineering company. So they will do 2 things. They will build the first one, and they will also help us optimize as we move forward. So it'll be an ongoing relationship. The third thing that we're doing moving forward in time is the CO2 assessment. So as I said, we have a view that virgin production of these commodities for this output versus our plant, that there's a significant difference in the CO2 footprint. So we expect that we will have the high-level indicative assessment of that done by October. That to us is pretty important because then that will help us in the discussions with the government. It'll help us in building the commercial model to really understand what the carbon footprint benefit looks like. We're also doing the market assessment. So we have a plan to roll these facilities out. The modular design will go into each market. So if we have a market where, for example, in Toronto, it's 5 times the size of the potential market in Calgary, we will do 5 plants, not build a facility that is 5 times the size. So the whole deployment of this plan through North America will be exactly the same machine going to different locations. Slightly different between ambient temperature and electrical connection and all that kind of good stuff, but ultimately it's the same machine that gets put into each location. So we're carrying out the market assessment to really determine what the optimal deployment strategy looks like. So how quickly can we roll them out? What are the best markets to go to? So that's combined with obviously the government and public affairs work, but importantly, it's the rollout to North America. So as you step back and you think about the stock price and you think about, okay, well, what are the catalysts over the next, 3 to 4 months? Number one, it's the first truck from the Delta facility. The second is the assessment of the CO2 benefit and really understanding at a high level, at least what that looks like. The third thing is the award of the RFP process to the engineering company from Calgary and confirmation that the design will be complete by the end of first quarter. And the last one is steady state production in Delta. What does that look like? How many days a week does that run? And then from that, what's coming out the back end of the facility? So in summary, I would say we believe this technology is, number one, ready to deliver now. Number two, it fits well with the current ESG environment. Number three, we think it has significant commercial upside. Tipping fees are not going down. Landfills do not want hydrocarbon products in the landfill, so we do not see the cost for that going down. Exactly the same with CO2 out the back end, and exactly the same with asphalt. We think the capital structure has huge potential from non-dilutive funding, debt, ESG support, etc. And lastly, and probably the most importantly, and certainly one of the key reasons that I'm here, we think this solves a huge environmental problem. So, Sophie, I don't know if that was too fast or too slow.
No, that was absolutely perfect. So thank you so much, Aidan. We do have some questions, so I'll try and group them for you. So let's talk about IP. Can you elaborate on that, specifically the patents?
Sure. So the process today is not patented. It's proprietary, and so nobody apart from the people that are close to the company, nobody knows how we are doing this. We have kicked off discussions on the patent process, but the patent process is also it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because to do a patent, you have to declare what you're doing to be able to patent it. So you have to be very careful about how you describe it, etc., rather such that when the patent gets filed, somebody in China doesn't pick it up and go, "That's a really good idea. Let's throw $100 million at this, and we'll have one of these running by the end of the year." So we have to be very careful about the patent process. We have kicked it off. The one thing that we are doing with respect to securing this, though, going forward, is even with the engineering design, there's about 15 steps in this process. I would describe, as I've looked at it, maybe 12 are completely off the shelf, and 3 are, this is where we're doing all the smart engineering and smart operation. So I suspect that if you come to see our plant in Calgary, the new build, you'll find 3 big black boxes in the middle of the process plant with lots of stuff going on behind it that you can't actually see, and that's also one of the reasons why, you know, we want to build probably the first 10 plants, but certainly the first 5 ourselves, completely under our control, completely under our own engineering, with our own procurement, because we do not need the ideas shared with anybody else. So that's we don't quite have a perfect answer to that, but certainly with design, deployment, and potential patenting, that's what we're thinking about.
Okay. And so then what is the commercial plan? When and from who will the revenue be generated?
So the commercial plan is for us to build our own plants, certainly the first 5. The revenue gets generated from essentially the roofers and collectors in each one of the jurisdictions who pay the tipping fee. As I said, we will try and, you know, provide a tipping fee that's attractive to the marketplace, and so part of the marketing program is of course engagement with those roofers, those collectors, etc., as well as engagement with the municipalities and the owners of the landfills, because, you know, they want reduction in numbers, not increase. So there's a cooperation on the front end. The back end is relatively straightforward. So the sand is saleable into the aggregate market, and so there are, you know, the aggregate, the asphalt pavers can buy the sand. It's essentially like, it's a bit like an off-the-shelf. Fibre is exactly the same. And the real upside comes from the asphalt sales. So the marketing strategy around asphalt is, of course, we could sell locally, but we also have the potential to have discussions with, national providers, and discussions with them on, is it just a local area deal? Is it a term deal, etc. And the CO2 just happens whenever you produce versus the baseline. The CO2 assessment that's being undertaken is versus the Canadian and international standards. So that once that gets verified, essentially when we run the plant, every ton generates X% of carbon benefit. And those can either be sold separately or they can be integrated into, for example, the asphalt sales. So if I'm selling to McAsphalt, for example, in Toronto, I'll say to them, okay, so here's the asphalt sales price. Do you want the CO2 credit integrated into that so they have the credits, or do we just ring fence it and we sell it separately?
Okay. Which actually brings me to another question. Do you have any offtake agreements for the end product yet? Or was
so there's so yes, there's an offtake agreement in Western Canada, and that's with Lafarge, and that's for the first 3 plants. I would tell you that the offtake price of that agreement is based on a startup that doesn't have steady state production, etc. Now, we know the quality is good enough for that. To meet market spec for asphalt. So we've already had the asphalt at the back end of the plant that's come out of the back end of the plant lab tested. So we're very comfortable with that. But that is a must take contract with Lafarge. So when we produce it, they have to take it. Now, when I was at BP, I would be like, okay, well, that should be almost free, I think, for me as a buyer. So that's a very different commercial discussion from when we sit down with Lafarge and I say, okay, we will have a truck every other day. We've got our QA in place. We're reliable. You can put it in your planning process. That commercial proposition is very different. So the offtake agreement today enables us to ensure that whatever we produce gets to market. The price reflects that. That offtake agreement will be renegotiated as we get to steady state production in Delta.
Okay. And so have you done an assessment on the shipping cost limitation on obtaining feedstock?
Yeah, so the perfect location of this plant is probably 100 feet past the gate for the landfill in the local jurisdiction. So we haven't done the detailed assessment, but the view is that if you are within 75 kilometers of a landfill collection area, then the difference in the tipping fee. So for example, if the tipping fee was $100 and we were at 75% and so at $75, that delta is sufficient to have people switch within a 75 to 100 kilometer radius. Now that's sort of anecdotal. It's based certainly on the Vancouver area, but if you think about a 50 kilometer radius, even a 50 kilometer radius in the GTA, that can capture probably 2 to 3 landfills that have asphalt shingles deposited at them. And the key thing is to be within relative ease and switching distance for a trucker, because he wants to, it's not so much necessarily the cost, but he wants to be within 10 to 15 kilometers. If you're within 1 kilometer, you're in the perfect location. But if you're in 10 to 15 kilometers of 2 landfills, then that's when we think about permitting and we think about site location. That's a key determinant factor to site location.
Okay. And so when we're talking about site location, have you heard whether municipalities are eager to provide or redirect using used shingles to Northstar?
Yeah. So if you look at the discussion in some of the areas that we have been we've started engagement in, like the GTA, we know that there are a number of municipalities that have, as part of their strategic plan, reduced landfill, material going to landfill, and especially hydrocarbon material. I think one of the slides we have here is, so there's, as an example, the global cities, the 23 global cities, the C40s 2018 declaration, which says, we need to cut the amount generated, we need to reduce the amount of waste sent to landfills. And Vancouver, of course, is beside Delta. That's our kind of where the base facility is. And so we're completely aligned, and Delta and Metro Vancouver are completely aligned with exactly what we're trying to do. They're just saying, okay, well, tell us when you're running, and then we're good to engage on exactly what that means.
Okay, and can you give us that timeline on when you'll be generating revenue?
Sure. Well, I mean, if we get to steady state production in Delta, we'll generate some revenue in Q4. Look, I think that as we think about the spend profile, we should generate revenue next year through steady state production in Delta. That's when the capital spend will also be happening for the first plant. My view on, we've got the kind of the timeline. So our view on, so RFP, as I said, for the new design, we believe that we will be in the second half of next year, we will be building the first kind of modular plant. Will it be running by the end of Q4? Maybe. If I was playing it kind of pretty safe, I would say first quarter of 23 is when we would expect to see the first expansion plant operating and revenue generating. And then after that, the cash flows will just look like how many plants are we building, and how is the revenue generation starting to roll off for each plant that gets commissioned.
Okay, great. Paul, I see you've joined us. Do you have a question or two for Aidan?
Just well, actually, it's going to be for Carson. I think your 30-cent warrants you talked about before. I mean, they're in the money by 17 cents here. What's the term on them, and how many warrants are outstanding? And it's going to generate some capital for you, obviously. And do you know these shareholders? Are they, like good shareholders?
Oh, you're Carson, muted. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. A couple questions there. I guess one question on the shareholders. Yes, they're all friendly. These warrant holders, I should say, have all been part of the private company, Empower Environmental. These are warrants issued since going back to 2016. There are, I believe, 5.7 million of those non-tradable warrants, which have an average exercise price of 30 cents. The term is they were renewed when the company went public. They're 5-year warrants, so I believe they expire on the date of the IPO, 5 years from the date of the IPO, so July 13th, 2026.
All right, so you have plenty of time. I mean, it's 1.5 million in revenue that's potentially sitting there. Is there any force on them? If you needed money, you could force them, things like that.
I don't believe there is a force.
Okay, a couple other questions. Your pilot plant that you have now.
Yep.
Can you produce some revenue with that? I mean, as you go along, or is it still in like testing phase?
I mean, so that's where I think, so the pilot plant, and I'm often pains to say it's not really a pilot plant. It's a pilot plant that's commercial scale is the way I would describe it. So it fits, like it's in a warehouse, right? So it's when you look at the height of the facility, the mixing tank is like up to the roof of my house. So I mean it's a big facility. So the question really around that pilot plant is, or the Delta facility is getting it to steady state. When it's at steady state, it could be, and look, we really need to define what steady state looks like, but that could be 50 to 100 tons a day. So we would be generating almost 50% of the revenue that we would from a normal plant. But the commercial model is exactly the same. We will get, tipping fees versus Vancouver landfill sites. And of course, because that's our start facility, we've got huge relationships there. And to Sophie's kind of earlier question, we have the roofing companies and the aggregators calling us to saying, like, when are you ready? Because we're coming to your facility. So we know we have supply. Okay. The asphalt out the back end, the first truck of asphalt out the back end is going to Lafarge in Vancouver. So they have absolutely the facilities to take it. Same with sand, local buyer, same with fiber, local buyer. So the commercial framework is set up to go, and that should be revenue positive in when it gets to steady state production. That will provide accretive revenue through next year. So
sorry, I thought you were finished there. I was just going to add as well, just on the state of the call it demonstration facility that we have. Looking at the comps, which we haven't touched on here, just in the interest of time, but Cielo Waste Solutions, CMC on the venture. I mean, they're a $750 million market cap. Cielo Waste Solutions is, they've been a public company for over 10 years. You can go back to their press releases. They first started commercializing their facility, their pilot plant, their demonstration facility in December of 2012. So, I mean, we're already there, and we're trading at call it a $45 million valuation. We're there where they were 9 years ago. So I think that from a delivery of commercialization standpoint, I think we're in a very solid spot.
Gotcha. Just a couple of quick questions, Aidan. To make it simple, 1 ton of shingles going in produces how much asphalt, how much fiber, how much sand? And the follow-up question to that would be, which is more profitable? Are you going to make more money with the asphalt, the sand, or the fiber?
So if you put 1 ton in the front end, you will get half a ton of sand, a quarter of a ton of fiber, and a quarter of a ton of asphalt. Roughly. Now
that's fine. That's all I'm asking. And the profitability phase, where's the money to be made?
So the money's to be made in the asphalt, and all the upside is in the asphalt. I mean, if I want to go and talk to an aggregate sand manufacturer about, does he really want a green product and does he want me to pay more, he'll be like, next. So and the same with the fiber guy. The people who are under ESG pressure, the people that we believe that there's upside from are the asphalt buyers. And currently the business model that we have has, the term agreement at at a lower number, but asphalt is about $800 a ton today. So that's where the kind of 3 key of the 5 commercial elements. The 3 key upside elements come from the tipping fee, which we think is going to go up, the asphalt price, which we believe we have green and renewable asphalt, and the CO2 benefit, which we haven't landed on yet, but we think there's a significant benefit there.
And some of these prices are publicly available, like for the tipping fees for the United States, for example. There are websites that we're happy to pass along that kind of chart out the gradual trend of tipping fees, for instance, and they break it down by region. But the trend has been significantly up, and as well on the asphalt, as Aidan mentioned. I mean, the asphalt market is trading at 862, I believe, as of July 2021 dollars per ton. So it's at all-time highs right now.
All right. So, and now the construction of your plants, when you get into, is this off the shelf, or is there parts that you have to be order specific? Is it very technical, or is it basically just an off the shelf?
So
I'm looking at lead time, like to construct. Do you have to order ahead of time, or can you go to Rental Depot and pick up your parts and make your plant?
So of course, like all good CEOs, I'll say it's both. So I would just, if you break our processes down, there's about 15 processes from front to back. Everything that we have is off the shelf with respect to construction of that. There are 3 parts of that technology that are put together in a very innovative way. So I would describe them as off the shelf parts that get put together in a not off the shelf solution by the time it's done. But So there's no, like some of the technologies that are out there are trying, or technology breakthroughs are out there, waste processing or recycling or repurposing, use almost like the back end of a refinery in a way to do a very complicated process, or they have vessels that take longer to build, complicated, etc. I don't believe that we suffer from that at all. Okay. I think what we've done is I think we, you know, is it probably, as we think about it, a 6 month build is probably about the right timeline. When people ask me, look, if you're rolling this out, you're at full scale, everything's done and you're rolling it out, how quickly could you roll these out? My view is probably at full pace, this will be around about a plant a quarter. So you could roll out 4 plants a year.
Perfect. Sophie, you got some more questions?
I do. So how much would a typical plant process, revenue, EBITDA per plant, and the cost?
So our estimated cost at the minute is kind of between $5 to $10 million. I mean, that's a bit of a range. If I was modeling this, I would model it at about 7.5 million with a plus or minus 10%. That would be, that's a kind of the scale of the capital. The guys at the Delta plant will say it's going to cost 5. You know, my senior process engineer will be like, oh, that's too low, it could be 10. So it's somewhere in the middle. We're very comfortable. It's not 50 or 20, that it's in the $5 to $10 million range. And look, the five revenue buckets, it's kind of difficult to really estimate what the EBITDA looks like. Sorry. So to run one of these facilities, it's probably a staff of around about 10 people. And so that's the front end handling, it's the operation, it's the back end handling, and it's probably 2 shifts. So we would likely, for most locations, go to kind of, you know, a 2-shift operation. So we believe that when you think about the asphalt price, the CO2, the tipping fee, and the back end, there's a very wide range depending on the location, depending on the view or pricing, et cetera. Look, we think the EBITDA could be anywhere in the kind of $2 to $4 million range. Again, look, that's a very, very early punt. You'd be glad to know that Carson is pulling together the detailed commercial model in this, so we'll be accurately be able to answer those questions in the next couple of months. And we need to do the CO2 analysis to really understand, look, what is the delta? What does the carbon credit look like? Is carbon at $35? Like, you know, what are we doing there? So $2 to $4 million isn't far off. We think that the payback of the capital, and this is assuming 100%, you know, Northstar capital, no government funding, is about 2 to 3 years. We really believe that with both debt funding potentially in this and government support in this, that the payback, of course, will be much, much, much faster because of the support that we're likely to get.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes. So I think Carson's taking care of a couple of questions that we had going on here.
Yeah, thank you, Carson.
If Paul, you don't have any other questions, then I think
one last question.
I could just say there, I was just going to say, if we want to address them very quickly, there was one question about a North American market. So what size would the GTA be? Based on our research and the reports available, this isn't like a widely covered subsector like mining or oil and gas, for instance, but from the reports that we found, the City of Vancouver put out a report in 2012 that there's an estimated 70,000 tons of shingles available for a city of about 2 million people. So safe to say that the GTA for a city of approximately 5 to 6 million people is likely 2 to 3 times that. And then in terms of the other question was on Cielo Waste Solutions, CMC, on the venture. And then the last question was just on whether we've set up a sales or business development team to tender purchase orders. Not currently. We have an existing stockpile on site at the Empower facility in Delta of about 20 to 25,000 tons of existing stockpile, which is fairly substantial capacity. And we also have a a relationship with a company in the industry that has agreed to deliver 1,000 tons of defective shingles every month at zero cost.
Okay, and sorry, one last question we just had come in. There can literally be hundreds of plants in the US and Canada. Is it possible that you may license other operators to fully exploit the market?
Yeah, I think so our initial first strategic step is to build our own facilities. I think the second step about how do we get to rapid deployment of this technology involves a number of different questions, and certainly licensing is definitely one of them. So we've been asked, and from a number of different kind of directions, would we consider that? I think we need to get our technology demonstrated. I think we need to get our first plants built. I think we need to get the optimization on the operation of those plants to make sure we have something that is a very, very effective and solid delivery mechanism that solves this environmental problem. And then we may be able to license.
I have one last question, which will wrap it up. We're in the middle of a federal election right now. Which party would benefit you most?
I think if you step back and you look at the pressure on the parties, irrespective of who the next government is, the environmental pressure on governments, it actually makes very little difference, because it doesn't matter what color the rosette that is hanging outside the parliament is, the environmental pressure is not going away.
I agree with you there. Thank you for that. That's a good answer. I appreciate that. Carson, Aidan, thank you so much. You've got a great story going for you. I really like this sector. We've had a good turnout. If any further questions, you can direct them to Sophie or myself. We can put you in touch with Aidan or with Carson, and we'll keep everybody up to speed over the next 4 months of all their press releases. And hopefully we can have you back in a few months when you get things really kickstarted and moving forward.
Perfect. Well, on behalf of Northstar, thank you for hosting us. Good to talk to you. I absolutely decided, Carson and I decided not to break into Belfast French, which would have been a massive embarrassment. But yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. And as Paul says, any further questions or follow up, then please let us know. More than happy to answer any more questions.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it very much. Thanks to everybody who logged in today. Everybody be safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.